All right, here we go, 102. You have proceeded through just an absolute mountain of content here as it pertains to HTML. We started out by making ancient 90s era and even before that era web pages, and we've progressed into making something with the creating blocks of content page that, roughly speaking, looks very much like a modern web page that we could have today, where we have these blocks of content like we see here, 1, 2, and 3. In our example, we did rectangle and a square, but it's immaterial. You created a web page that looks like it might belong as part of a greater website that you would see someplace on the web today. So with our very final experience here in using HTML and using CSS to put together web pages, what we are going to do is, like you see here on this Wix creative page, and what we are going to do is create a portfolio web page. Now, you and I are going to get it started here together, but this is what you are going to finish as the homework for your HTML and your CSS experience here. So just in case you haven't done so, go back and check all of those videos because they are going to pay dividends when it comes to actually putting together your portfolio website when we're done. So I'm just going to scroll down a little bit here. This link will be back in the Eagle page with all the links and the videos. It's not there yet. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, and it's this one right here, the Steve Wolf Designs. He has a great last name. I'd spell it a little differently personally. Oh, because I do. But at any rate, here we can see something that we're going to approximate, something that we're going to create a little bit differently when we put together our pages. So what you see here is on the top, across here, we have a big block of content, and you'll notice it's indented a little bit from the left-hand side of the page. We've already done this. And if you look down below, we have two images, one on the left and one on the right. The image on the left-hand side is a rectangle of about 70% of the viewport, so that's the entire screen there. The image on the right consists of about 30% of your image. That sounds awfully familiar. So all of these things that we have been doing are building to what we can do right here. So if you come back to our HTML demos page, now your page again is going to look different because all of these videos and additional links are going to be in there. And scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll see creating a portfolio page. Now, what I'll tell you is, so I'm going to open this in the background, is that there is very little, almost nothing here inside of our HTML area because we are going to build all of this from scratch. And because we're going to build it from scratch, what I'm actually going to suggest that we do is we're going to start over here with our style.css first, because we kind of already know what we're going to need because we've already built things similar to this before. So first and foremost, what I can tell you is we are going to need a body. So that is, remember, where we keep all of the stuff to our page. So body is going to need to be represented in here somewhere. We're probably going to need in H1. We're probably going to need in H2. We're probably going to need in H3, like so. Now for ease, I always start these curly braces on the next line down because it's just easier for my eye to track right down the left-hand side of the page. That's something you may choose to do. It's something you may not choose to do. But this way you have the selector, so that's the thing we want to change, right? Body, H1, H2, H3, in its own color on its own line so that you know, oh, this is where I have to go for these things. Other things we might want to do, paragraph, we'll leave that be for the time being. So we have body, H1, H2, H3, and paragraph. Now, if we look at that portfolio page, you'll remember that we said we had this big block of content here on the top. And you'll remember in our creating blocks of content that we actually did the same thing. We had a container that housed our other containers so that everything looked real nice. So I'm going to call this something. So I'm going to call it dot top container. Remember, the dot says it's a class, and a class is something I can use multiple times on a page. So I'm going to need a top container, and I also know that if I look at this, I'm going to need a left image and a right image. So I'm going to call it dot left image, because that's the image that'll be, you guessed it, on the left-hand side. And as such, I'll have a right image, and that's the image I'm going to have on the right-hand side. So let's go ahead and play with these images first. Now, there's no really great way that I can say this is the one way you can build a web page. Web pages are not built from top to bottom, left to right, exclusively in that order. Web pages are built a little here, built a little here, built a little here, and over time you put all the stuff together. I think a really great metaphor for building a web page is kind of like playing with Legos. So you buy these big sets. I don't buy these big sets. My poor boy is never going to get one of those from us because I think they're way too expensive. But you get, or you see these big sets where they're all put together, and they don't happen that way, right? You put a little bit together over here, and then you put another section together over there, and sooner or later, usually later, you start putting them all together. And then when you're done, it looks like the Batmobile or a castle or whatever it happens to be. So I'm going to start with the two images, the left image and the right image, because the way that looks and feels is going to help me decide how the rest of my page looks and feels. So what we need here, because we saw them here in the portfolio page that we're going to simulate, and we've seen it here on The Verge or on rockvalleycollege.edu or on most of every site it is that you probably go to, is we're looking here at high quality images. We want a bulk of the story of our website to be told by the images that we see there. So what I have for you here, and the link is also over here in our HTML demos page, is Unsplash. Unsplash is fantastic because it is royalty free. So that means free for you to use images that are actually super duper high quality for the most part. So anybody who's ever interacted with us in CIS knows that we are a department that loves our coffee. So you cannot tell the story of CIS without including in it coffee. So here we are, and all I did was search for images of coffee, and boom, I get a ton. Be a little bit careful. The top and the bottom links, if I scroll down a little bit, you ought to be able to see them. Nope. For this, because I was already on this page. But if you see these browse images on iStock or whatever it is, that's an advertisement for paid for images. If you scroll down just a little bit, invariably you're going to see results for whatever it is that you were looking for. Make sure that you're not paying for anything. That it's just a step further than we're going to need for that. So here I've got a bunch of high quality coffee images. They are all reminding me that I would like more coffee. So I'm just going to pick this one up here on the very top, and I'm going to go ahead and, again, because of the way I'm recording this, I have to open it in a new tab in this window. So for me on my Mac, that is Command click, and for you on a PC potentially, that would be Control click. It's actually the same on a Chromebook. You can just Control click and it'll open it up in a new tab in your browser. So here is my brown coffee cup. You can see it's a really high quality image. That's nice. And what I am going to do is right click any place on here, copy image address. This is the simplified version of what we did way back in probably the third or the fourth video when we were working with images, and a lot of those same rules are gonna apply here. So now I have an image for what I want to see in the background of one of my two image sections for my page. So I'm going to go click back on our creating a portfolio, and here I've got left image and right image. So let's take a look again at this image. It is more of a square than it is a rectangle. So because it's more of a square than a rectangle, I'm going to pick to put this in my right image container, because that's the one on the right hand side, and that's the one that is the square. The one on the other side is the rectangle. This all works in our favor. So remember, we needed a height value for our container classes, and I'm just going to start with an opening value, 350 pixels. I know, again, that's going to be different on all of our devices. On my particular device, that's going to be really small because it's something like, I think it's, I'm not 100% sure. It's at least 5,000 pixels across. So there's a lot of space happening there. So I'm going with 300 pixels for my height. And you'll remember we picked a width when we were working with our previous creating blocks of content page. We had two sections, the rectangle and the square, right? Struggling with shapes. So my square was about 30% of the width and my rectangle was about 70% of the width. And I'm just going to repeat that here. So I'm going to go with 30% of the width of whatever is happening across the page is going to be my right image. The other two things we added a float. And instead of left, we do want right because it's on the other side of the page. And we needed to add a background image. So what essentially we're going to do is we're going to use the picture of the coffee, and it's going to be in the background. So it's back here where the rest of the content, if that was the microphone, was in front. So you don't see everything that's happening back here, and you can use it to layer out what's happening in front of it. So we want background image. So if you just start typing background and go down, you can find background image. And for this, we want to say URL. It's the easiest way to do this. What we're saying is the image that we're referring to is actually brought to us by the web. So you don't have to download this image. So here inside of the parens that we have for that URL, just go ahead and paste that Unsplash image. And this time around, you'll notice while it is still a really gnarly image URL, it's way less gnarly than that image URL was the last time around. And that's because we picked a site that actually says, yeah, it's okay. You can just have access to these pictures as opposed to a Google image search, which doesn't necessarily do the same thing. So I hit run, and I should have known the answer to this was it's not going to show anything because I'm not actually showing my right image anyplace on the website. So in order to do that, I have to come back over to my index.html. So each one of those container classes that we create in our style.css is represented here in the HTML as a div, a divider. So it's div class because I used the dot nomenclature for my right image, and I believe that's what I called it. Yep, right image. So back over here inside of those double quotes, I say right image, just like so. And then after this, I'm just going to go ahead and close off that div. So the only thing I've added here is an opening tag for that div class equals right image, and then immediately after it I closed off that tag /div. And now when I run it, it takes a moment there, but we did get a start to what it is that I expect to see. Now I know that something is being displayed there because if you look on the display over here, I've got a coffee color something happening, but it's not doing exactly what I want it to do. Now, the reason for that is if we go over here and we look at this brown ceramic teacup photo, and if I click on this downward arrow, it is 4,240 pixels by 2,832 pixels. In other words, it's really, really big. And it's too big, frankly, to fit in that little 300 pixel space that I gave it. So what we want to do is in our CSS, we want to constrain that picture a little more. So this goes way back to those image properties that we used in the working with images video and the more formatting with CSS videos, but we're going to go ahead and do some of that here. So the very first thing that we can do is we can change the background position of that. And so what that's going to do is going to suggest, okay, you've got a container here. Where is the image going to show up in that container? So right now the image just goes, whatever is at the top left is at the top left. So you can see that right here. There's the top left of the image. You can see that right here. Here's the top left of the image. It's really not in the right position for us with this itty bitty little window that I gave it. So background position, I'm going to say center, because what that's going to do is rely on the browser to figure out where the middle of that container is, and it's going to put the middle of the image in the middle of that container. So when I run it, what do I see? I see the top dead center right here of this huge image in this very small space that I have right there. My brain is telling me delicious coffee. That's a picture that we see. So that's way too big still. So we can change the size of that particular image so that we can see a lot more of what is happening there. So if I start typing back and go down, otherwise I could type out background dash size, and now we have the ability to change the size of that particular image. So I'm just going to pick a value and we're going to see what happens. I'm going to say 35%. And we'll see what happens. So if I say run, we've got lots of repeats happening there, right? Little image, little image, little image, and it's doing it, oh, let's say 15 times. That's not quite right. So let's see what happens if I say 85% for the background size. It's still maybe not quite right. So let's say 100% for the background size. And it's getting a little better, but what do you notice is that we've got repeats happening there. The image repeats 1, 2, 3 times. Well, it just so happens there's a background repeat that we can use here too. And what that'll do, we want background repeat. And what we want is no repeat. Like so. What that's going to do is prevent that image from being repeated. We're getting a little bit closer now, right? We do not have the top and the bottom of the image repeating again and again. We have the center of that coffee cup in the center of our image, but it's still not quite the image that I want there. It's still a little too small. So let's take this background size and let's go up to 125%. It's a little closer, but not quite. Let's take that back up to 145%. Boom. Now at 145%, that image is taking up the entire of the right image container that I created, and it looks like it's centered in there and the image is going all the way out to the corners. So let's do it again, and we're going to do it with left image. So I'm going to come back here to my coffee pictures and I'm going to find something that generally speaking is a rectangle. It's just easier, especially when you're starting out, to match the kind of container you're looking for to the kind of image you hope to put in there. Is it possible to put a rectangular image correctly in a square bin? With practice, but we don't need to worry about that now. So let's find a rectangular image that shouldn't be altogether that hard. So I'm going to scroll down here. We've got one rectangular image right here. Here we go. And if you're following along, which I really very much hope that you are, pick any image that works for you. It's perfectly okay. So I've got 4 coffee cups. Here we go. It is a rectangular image. It is whitish. It's got coffee. So far, so good. So I'm going to go ahead and right click on this, and I'm going to say copy image address. And then I'm going to go back here to my replit. And inside of left image, I'm going to need to do some creation of that particular container class. So very much like right image did, I'm going to need a height. And for this height, I'm going to say the same thing as I did with the right-hand side. So this is the left, and I want a height of 350 pixels. Now I'm going to need a width. And remember, we wanted one rectangular box and one square box. So we've already built our square box. You can see it right over here with the image we played with first. So this time around, we want a 70% of our width image because we've already done the other 30%. This time we need 70. So previously we had a float right. This time we need float left. This one will be displayed on the left-hand side. The other one will be displayed on the right-hand side. So we'll keep going. And this time we have background image. And remember, we needed a URL because we are going out to the internet for it. And I'm going to paste my URL in there and add the semicolon at the back of that line. And we'll leave the background position, the background size, and the background repeat for just a moment. Now, I know that if I just hit run, nothing is going to change here because I didn't add my left image class to my HTML. So I'm going to go click back in HTML. And in front of my right image, I have div class equals left image. Remember, it has to be spelled the same way. And if you don't spell them the same way, it's not going to be displayed there. So this time I have div class equals left image, and then I closed off that div immediately, just like I did. And for me, it's going to be line 12. Yours might be slightly different. On line 12 with my right image. This time when I run it, and I knew it wasn't going to look quite right, but I can see that that image is there. And this is where we can come back here to our style.css. This is going to be the easiest part, or an easier way to do this, is just copy these last 3 lines. So the rest of those properties and values, so the properties would be like background position. The properties would be like background size and background repeat. I'm just going to go ahead and run it, and we're going to see that it's really not quite right. And actually, we can see 2 things here are not quite right. I still need that image on the right-hand side to be a little bit bigger. So I'm going to go with 165%. Looks like we can still be a little bit bigger. I'm going to go with 175%. Boom. And now when we look at our 2 images, they are taking up exactly the same height. They are taking up exactly the width that we wanted. 70% on the left-hand side and 30% on the right-hand side. Now, I can still do a little bit of changes here to my left image. So I'm going to go with 100% for the background size because we want that image to be a little bit smaller so that I can see whatever that hello sign says. And at 105%, it's still a little big. Let's try 85% and see what we get. So I have the image at 85%, and it says hello sunshine, and we can actually read that. But look what happened over here on the left and the right of the image. There's a little bit of an extra space there. So let's just take that background size and say 100. I can't quite see the sunshine, but I can see the, I can figure out what that means, right? You don't have to be like a Jeopardy or a Wheel of Fortune champion to see like, oh, hello, sunshine, that's going to be okay. That's okay for your website visitor. Now look at what we've got here. We've got two high quality images that are taking up 100% of the screen over here on my right hand side. And we are already building really quickly towards making that page look something like this. And all we did, and this would go faster if we weren't talking our way through it, and all we did was create two content classes, left image and right image, and we found images to fill up the background with them. So this is going so far particularly well. So the next thing I want to do is add back here, because I know I'm going to need it. I'm going to add back my top container. So remember, the top container is doing like we see here with this paragraph, and that's what we want for this particular div to do. So I've got div class equals top container, like so. And I'm going to add my slash div there. So everything we do to add content here is going to be inside of our top container class. So before we get this one moving, let's add some style here. Remember, again, we always need a height and a width in order for our container classes to be viewed. So I'm just going to copy out a left image, height and width. Now, we don't want it to be exactly that. We want our top container to be 100% of the width of the page. Oops, so I've got 100 there. I'm going to make it just a little bit more narrow for the time being. So I'm going to pick 250 pixels because I want those two images on the bottom to be a little bit taller than the rest of the content, like you see here. These images on the bottom are taller than the content we see here. This is something that easily we can change later. So I've got a height of 250 pixels. I've got a width of 100%, so it's going to fill up that whole section over there. Now, just to make sure that we can see it, as opposed to just seeing a big white block there, I want a background color here. So I've selected background color, and someplace up here I still have my HTML color picker. I'm gonna pick a coffee related color. Now for the time being, we have this very nice beige color. We've got a couple of coffee-ish colors over here. I'm just gonna pick something. We'll pick something a little darker, right about here, just so that we can really see it stand out. So for me, all I did was I'm using my calibrated eyeball. I'm clicking on the dark colors over here. I'm seeing brown. Here we go. I'm going to pick a dark brown. So that's down here at 30% for the lighter darker scale. And I'm going to go ahead and copy that. So this one happens to be 73 4D26. Your color might be different. Perfectly okay. We'll come back to creating my portfolio. I'm going to paste that in as my background color and add my semicolon there. And this time when I run it, hallelujah, I was afraid we wouldn't get it. We see there's my coffee color. There's that block of text we're going to add, and it's on top of those two images, just like we see here in my Wix Creative examples of web page design. So what we've got is we want to fill content in there. So remember, content is body, it's H1, it's H2, it's H3, etc. And we're going to put it inside of this class, top container, so that when we see all of that content, whatever that content is about to be, you're going to see it happen right over here. So let's do a couple of examples here. I'm going to have an H1. So we need a, remember that H1 is going to be in black because that's the standard color. So we want the color of H1 to change. So we'll come back to our color picker and we'll pick a lighter Color, I'm going to pick 90%. So it is F2E6D9, but again, your color could be entirely different. So I'm picking a light shade of coffee. Now, our font size, remember that's something that we changed in the 2 previous videos, just says how big is that font going to be relative to the rest of the fonts that you see here on the page. I'm going to pick something a little bit bigger, 150%. So that means make it plenty big. I want it to really stick out. Now, as we keep going, we'll remember that we used Google Fonts the last time around. And I noticed this one right here, this Estonia one. So I'm going to go ahead and click on it. And then I've got over here on the right-hand side, I've got my @import statement. I think this is going to look really good on my coffee website. So I need to, before body, so up here on line number 1, I'm just going to add some spaces and I'm going to paste that @import statement. Now I've got Poppins, I've got Lobster, and I've got Estonia, that's the name of it, as my styles. So I'm going to paste that in correctly this time around. So this time when I say font family, I'm going to simply say Estonia like we see it up above here, Estonia with a capital E. And now I have an H1 that's going to have a size, a color, and a font family. To test it out really quickly, we'll come here into index.html, and inside of my div class, I'm going to add an H1, and I'm going to say, hello, my name is Eric. Just like so. And I'm going to close off my H1. I'm going to run this. And there we go. It's a little smaller than I was expecting, but it says, hello, my name is Eric. Now we're going to go through and fine tune this in the way we saw in our previous examples, going back actually the last 4 videos. Now, 150% was not big enough for me. I'm going to say 350% because that's much larger. Boom. And this is the size I was envisioning when, I blotted this out in my head. So all I did was change the font size from 150% to 350%, and it looked about the way I wanted it to. If you want it somewhat bigger, that's fine too. Let's change it to 450%. Bigger. That's really all we needed. Now, you'll notice that hello part is all the way up here in the left-hand side of the color block that I have there for my top container class. And the last time around, we thought, this looks better if I take that and I move it down and I move it to the right just a little bit. So in my H1, what I want is a padding. Padding is going to move the content over from the wherever it is that you tell it. So we're going to add actually not a padding, but a padding left. And what that's going to do is move it over from the left-hand side. I'm going to use a percent value here just so we can see what happens. I'm going to say 5%. And you'll see it's moved over a little bit there from the left-hand side of the page. Now, if that's too far, so let's change it a little bit. Let's say 2.5%. That's going to move it back over to the right-hand side a little bit and make everything, or in from the right-hand side to the left, my mistake. And that, I like the padding on that. So if we want to move it down, we've got padding top. And I'm going to use that same 2.5% because I like the way that looked. And there we go. We've got the hello, my name is Eric, and it's moved down and it's moved to the right, and everything looks the way I want it to. Kind of similar to what we see happening here with this portfolio page. So already we've really only added in our HTML, we have only created, here. It is 5 lines of code. And look over here on the right-hand side of our page what it looks like. We've got content there. Hello, my name is Eric. That is content. We've got a theme. The colors there all go together, and it's communicating to the viewer on the other side. It is communicating that this is a page that's going to be about coffee. So let's continue on with a little bit of content here, and then I'm going to let you go and create your own portfolio pages. Don't worry, there's another description right under this. Some of the other things that we have used and that you'll have to use are an ordered list. So I'm going to add those here. We've got unordered lists. Potentially you could use whichever one of the two of those that you prefer. So let's say ordered list. And remember, the ordered list is going to have a black font face, or a font color rather, because that's what the default is for the page. So for the time being, I'm just going to copy this color from my H1. I do like the way that that looks over there. So I'm going to paste it here so that the color is the same, so we can just see how everything looks. While we're at it, let's just go ahead and add that here. So hello, my name is Eric. I'm going to add a paragraph, and I'm going to say, welcome to my page. So I've added a paragraph, welcome to my page. It's very nice to meet you. And I've spelled nice incorrectly. There we go. I've fixed it there. I'm just going to go ahead and run this, and we're going to see a little bit of the challenge of running a web page. This is why it's nice to keep hitting that run, and seeing in real time how your page looks. Notice where that paragraph is. It's way over on the left-hand side of the page where we did not want it to be. So back over in style, here in paragraph, I'm going to take that padding left. There it is. And I'm going to add it to paragraph, because that's going to help push my paragraphs 2.5% over from the left-hand side of the page. So if I run this, you'll notice it's where I expected it to be. So it's hard to see, and that's because we haven't changed the color. I'm going to copy that H1 from the color, and I'm going to add it here inside of my paragraph. So if I run it, you'll see my paragraph did in fact change the color that we're seeing there. So just to be a little bit different, I'm going to come through here in my HTML color picker, and I'm going to pick something a little different for the color of that paragraph. I'm going to go with white instead, just so that we can see it stick out a little bit more. So that's all Fs. So when I come back through here and I paste that in as the color for my paragraph and we run it, you'll notice it's white. It definitely, on my screen for sure, it's definitely a different color than we see up here for my H1. So I have welcome to my page. It's very nice to meet you. We could change this very, very easily with Google Fonts. We'll find a good looking font. Now, typically on a page, you really only want 2 or at most 3 different fonts. So I could select something different. I could select something and reuse it here. So remember, we have Estonia, we have Lobster, and we have Poppins. I actually rather like that Poppins one. So we'll come through here in my paragraph, and I'm going to add a font family. So it's font-family, and we'll just put in Poppins there, because it's already here from our import statement, and there we have it. Welcome to my page. It's very nice to meet you. Now, I think this is starting to look like a real web page. This is starting to look like somebody accidentally designed it well, and it's starting to look like something that some potential future customer might come to and say, yeah, this looks good. So that's what we're aiming for here with your portfolio pages. The portfolios can look however you would like them to. So whatever those 2 bottom images are, that's no problem. You can select those. Whatever the 2 bottom image proportions are, do you like 50-50? Do you like 30-70? Do you like 40-60? Use your calibrated eyeball and determine what looks good for you. What color scheme is it going to have? use the HTML color picker and pick a good color scheme for your page. It's really all up to you, and it's remarkable how quickly all of this goes. So the very last thing we'll do here together before I tear you loose on your own projects is I'm going to add an ordered list here. Remember, each one of the list items, so those are the things that are going to show up in your unordered list, are going to need one of these opening and closing tags for list items. So just before I proceed, I'm going to copy this. So I've got list items and I'm going to paste it a bunch of times. So I have pasted it a bunch of times. And if you look over here in my window, you're going to see down here in very, very hard to read fashion, you can see my ordered list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 continue down, and it's impossible to see. There's a couple of things we can do about this, and I'm going to show you both of them, and whichever one of the two of these you'd like to do for your portfolio page, that's fine. The first thing we can do is just come back to our style.css and come down to our top container. Remember, the top container is this section over here where the coffee brown background is, and the light, it's super duper light brown, frankly, foreground is there. And what I can do is change its height. So instead of 250, I'm going to change this to 650. And boom, you can see that that gave us a bunch more space. Now I can fine tune this a little bit. 650 is clearly too many. I'm going to go 450. That's a little bit better. I'm going to go 400. That's a lot better. And now that looks, roughly speaking, how I expected it to look before. And, you know, it doesn't look out of place with the exception of, notice where those unordered lists start? Way over here on the left-hand side where everything else is indented a little bit more. That's because I did not include that padding left of 2.5%. So if I come over here to my ordered list and I add that padding here, it's going to move around based on that. So actually, when I put in 2.5%, the challenge with an ordered list is those numbers actually start on the left of where the line from your previous paragraph was. So you'll notice that at 2.5%, that moves my ordered list way over to the left-hand side. That's not very satisfying. So what I'm going to do is pick 4.5%. And this time it's a little bit closer. If I want them actually indented, I'm going to pick 5.5%. And now you'll notice that that's inside of my other paragraph markers. You will have known none of that going into it. And that's the great part about HTML. Look at how fast that we changed the way that looked just based on, oh, that was wrong. Let's go the other way. It's still not right. Let's keep going in that direction. That's perfect. Let's stop right there. All of this is like a visual medium. So everything you do, you can see almost instantaneously and keep going or correcting it as you go along. Now, the other thing I said that we could do is, so I'm going to change top container's height back to 250, and we're going to run it. And again, you'll see that you can't really see what's happening there with the rest of my ordered list. So let's try doing something a little different and changing, instead of the color to something lighter, let's see what happens when we change the color there to something darker. So I'm going to take a very dark coffee color. It's not, I'm going to take this one, 60, 40, 20. I'm going to take a very dark coffee color and I'm going to replace that very light color that I put in previously. And now I can see it better, at least a little bit better, in my in the picture than I can see it in the content area. That's something you can choose to do. You can take your content and put it down there into the left and the right container classes. So we can push this a little bit further down and make it look a little bit more potentially satisfactory. So I'm going to make here an H3, and I'm going to say this is a page for RVC CIS 102. And over here in my style.css, I'm going to take all the stuff that I did for my H1. I'm going to put it in my H2, and we're going to run it because I put it on the wrong side. I'm going to take that H3 and cut it and put it under my H1. I guess I didn't realize I put it under the paragraph. That's what I get for really close reading. And we're going to run it again. Let's make that a little smaller. Again, this is all calibrated eyeball. And you'll get it right when it looks right. That's getting closer. I mean, this is a page for RVC CIS 102. It doesn't look horrible there. The color is right. The font face there is right. The only thing we have to change now is this paragraph so that we can see the paragraph over our image down there. That's really easy to do. So I'm going to take that ordered list color. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it over the white here in my paragraph, and I'm going to run it. And there we go. Welcome to my page. It's very nice to meet you, and you can see those numbers. If we would come back in here to our unordered list, and we'll say coffee tastes great, we'll say smells great, and coffee prevents tragedy. When we run this, I'm just going to block those out as a comment. And now take a look at this. This looks like a designed web page. Hello, my name is Eric. This page is for RVC CIS 102. Welcome to my page. It's nice to meet you. Coffee tastes great. Coffee smells great. Coffee is warm. Coffee prevents tragedy. And we can keep playing with this until it looks exactly the way we want it to look by changing, let's say, the paragraph font or the ordered list font. As a matter of fact, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take Poppins here for our font family, and I'm going to add that to my ordered list so that it's very, very consistent. And there we go. So this is the base template you can use to build your portfolio page. And the project description for that is immediately under this one.